What's happening, tabletop gamers? My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today we're going to learn how to play the 2 to 4 player adventure game Survive! Escape from Atlantis by Julian Courtland-Smith and published by Stronghold Games. In Survive! Escape from Atlantis, the island of Atlantis has been discovered, and you, the players, command groups of adventurers that have gone to the island and have uncovered its riches. And now you're eager to return with those riches, except the island has other plans, as it is now beginning to disappear into the sea. So you guys are going to have to get a move on to try and get your survivors into a boat or just swim through the ocean and just hope you manage to get to a neighboring island without having your boat destroyed by whales and your survivors eaten by sharks and sea monsters, all together the most points to win. Let's get to the table and let's see what's in the box. To set up the game, place the 5 sea serpents onto the board marked with the sea serpent symbol. Next, take all of these land tiles representing the 3 different terrains, shuffle them up, and place them all on the sea spaces within this black boundary. This will allow you to create the island that is going to be sinking into the sea. You should be able to tell where these are because the black spaces that you're supposed to place them in, the lines around them are much thicker than the other spaces of the board. Each player will then choose a color and receive the 10 corresponding adventurers of that color along with 2 ships. Place the remaining ships, whales, and sharks next to the board for now. They will come into play later. Also, when having everybody sit around the board, make sure everybody sits where one of the 4 corner islands is directly in front of each player. I'll explain why you need to do this later on. Choose a player to be the star player either by choice or randomly. Starting with the first player and going clockwise, each player will go around adding their adventurers to the board. This will keep going until all the adventurers have been placed onto the board. In a game with less than 4 players, some spaces will stay empty. Finally, starting with the first player again and going clockwise, every player is going to go around placing one of their boats in an empty sea space that does not have another player's boat or any sea creatures in it. Once you have placed all the boats around the island, you are ready to begin. One note before we get started. Each of the explorers has a number from 1 to 6 on the bottom of the adventurers. This represents how many points they will score for you if you can safely get them to any one of the 4 islands, not including the one that's sitting closest to you. For example, if I was sitting closest to this island, I would not be allowed to move one of my adventurers here to safety. I would be, however, allowed to move them to one of the other 3 islands. Also, once the game begins, you are not allowed to look at the bottoms of your own adventurers regardless of whether or not they made it safely to one of the islands or if they were removed from the game. Now, starting with the first player and going clockwise, each player will start taking their turns. On your turn, you have 4 actions that you must do in the following order. Once per turn, you are allowed to play any of the following tiles if you've obtained them during a previous turn. Next, you are given 3 spaces of movement to move in any combination of explorers or ships. For example, I could go 1, 2, 3, or I could go 1, 2, 3, or I could go 1, 2, and 3. There are several things you'll need to keep in mind, which due to time reasons I can't explain them all, but I do have several screenshots that I will show here that will explain everything when it comes to moving. Once you have completed your 3 movements, you will then choose a tile from the island and you are going to remove it. Any explorers that were on that tile when you removed it will now be in the sea space. There's 2 things to keep in mind when removing a tile. First, you have to remove a tile that is next to at least 1 sea space. And second, you have to remove all of the beach tiles first, then all the forest tiles, then all the mountains. If there is a beach tile that is completely surrounded by forests or mountains, remove it as the last beach tile, even if it's not next to a sea space. The same rule goes if there's a forest completely surrounded by mountains. Once you remove a tile, look at that tile secretly without showing it to anyone. If the tile that you removed has a green border around it, just like any of these, immediately reveal it to the rest of the players, resolving its action, and then remove it from the game. For example, the tile that was just removed has a green shark. This means you will take a shark from the supply and place it where the tile was removed. Any swimmers in a space where a shark is placed are immediately removed from the game. If you remove a tile that has a red border around it, take that tile and place it face down in front of you. That becomes part of your hand. There are two types of red tiles. One is the one I've already showed you, which if they have just a plain red border, you place it into your hand and you can play it at the beginning of your next turn. If you remove the tile and it has this red cross on it, like this one here, these can only be played on another player's turn to protect your explorers. For example, if a player were to move the shark into a space with one of my explorers, I could play this tile to remove the shark from the game before it removes my adventurer. The adventurer stays where it is. Finally, you will roll the creature die. The creature die has 3 faces, 2 on each face of the 3 different creatures that are in the game. 2 whales, 2 sharks, and 2 sea creatures. What you're going to do is you are going to roll the die, and whatever face you roll, if there is one of those on the board, you are going to move that creature up to the amount of spaces it allows. The amount of spaces that each creature can move is listed right down here on the bottom of the game board. The whales can move up to 3, the sharks can move up to 2, and the sea creatures can move 1. If you rolled a face on the die and there are no creatures that match that face on the board, then nothing happens. Each of the 3 creatures in the game have a different way of interacting with the adventurers. The whale, if it moves into a space with a boat that has at least one adventurer in it, the whale will destroy the boat. Any explorers that are in it will stay on the board. The whale does not affect swimmers. If the whale moves into a space with a boat with an adventurer and there was a shark in there, then both the boat and all the adventurers would be removed from the game. If the whale moves into a space with a boat and the boat is empty, then nothing happens. The shark can only affect swimmers. If the shark moves into a space with a swimmer, the swimmer is immediately removed from the game. However, if the shark moves into a space with a boat and a passenger, the shark will do nothing. If the sea serpent moves into a space that has an explorer, regardless of whether it is in the boat or not, the explorer is removed from the game. If the explorer was in the boat, then the boat is removed from the game as well. If the sea serpent moves into a space with an empty boat, however, nothing happens. One quick note, if any of the sea creatures ends up moving into a space that satisfies their ability conditions, carry out their conditions immediately, and then their movement immediately ends. Once you've completed all 4 actions, your turn is over and play passes to the left. The game ends in one way and one way only. Under one of these mountain tiles is a volcano. When the volcano is ever revealed, the island is completely destroyed. Any adventurers that are either still on the island or have not made it to one of the out 4 islands is completely removed from the game, and the game will end immediately. When the game ends, gather all the adventurers that managed to successfully escape onto any of the 4 islands. Then count up the total amount of points that are on all the adventurers that managed to escape, count up to your total, and whoever has the most points is the winner. If at any point during the game you manage to lose all your adventurers, Keep playing turns as normal, but skip the movement step. And that is everything you need to know in order to play Survive Escape from Atlantis. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will get to them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to know my thoughts on Survive Escape from Atlantis, or if you want to learn how to play more games, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.